Hey, Cindy, and hey to all of our listeners out there. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Secrets in Medical Device Sales brought to you by the Girls of Grit.
Yes, thank you. We are very excited to have a very special guest on our show today. And honestly, I'm just going to step back and allow Alicia to completely introduce herself, tell us your story, and we just are very excited to dig right in today.
Well, first of all, I have to thank you, ladies, not just for having me as a guest, but for creating a space for us to gather, get together, and listen and learn from one another. It's so important that we, as professionals and as women, as in leaders and aspiring leaders, really can have the opportunity to connect. So thank you for creating a space, and I am honored to be your guest. And really, it's a fun story to tell, and I love that I get to share it with you up front, because my journey into healthcare and the aesthetic side of healthcare is like a tapestry, I'd like to say. It's like woven between determination and opportunity with a little bit of what I'd like to say grit and grace that you guys kind of have in your podcast name. So I graduated college with a degree in speech language pathology, which sounds extremely brilliant and bright and just really exciting. And it was, for sure. But my path initially diverged kind of when life circumstances paused my pursuit of a master's degree, which you need to actually become a licensed speech language pathologist, along with some other kind of post-educational experience. I'm not going to dive into that, but in the interim, I kind of experienced a lot of different things. I was in retail sales. I sold aerobic clothing. I sold shoes when Nine West had shoe stores. And then I even sold voicemail. And I don't remember, like, this is how old I am. I'm a level 55 in a few months. And so I sold voicemail and it came out and it was like the stutter tone voicemail, the one that made answering machines obsolete. That's how old I am.
Oh.
And it would be like you pick up the phone and you hear that stutter dial tone, you put in your code and you get your voicemail. So I sold that residentially and commercially. And talk about a difficulty in understanding sales and doing it from telesales, selling something that had to do with telephonics. It was kind of crazy, but it was great. But I was very persistent, and I just had this longing to return back to like healthcare. It was just beckoning me because I was in my roots. And so I seized a role in a very busy orthopedic practice. And I thought, listen, I am not somebody who has a big ego. If I'm trying to start off, I'll start at the ground level. And I feel there's really great value when you get in on the ground level, because then you see everything as you go up and you have an understanding of the foundation, right? Because that's the strength of it. And so I was completely resolved to be the best director of first impressions, front desk person that I could ever be. I was keenly observant. I absorbed everything. I like to say I didn't just only look who was in front of me, which was the patients, but I look who was around me and beside me and behind me and all the other facets of the practice. So what were other people doing in the practice? How could I make their job easier in the role that I had? But how could I see opportunity perhaps to do something else? And that really helped me to be able to see the possibilities out there and what I wanted to do and what I didn't want to do. I knew I didn't want to get into billing, and I knew I didn't want to run the practice. And really, if you wanted to get to that higher level, somebody had to die or retire, which is like getting on the Supreme Court, right? It just wasn't happening. But I really felt attracted to this role in the practice called the patient care coordinator, and working directly with the surgeon, which I know you probably work with these types of people with your surgeons that you work with. And I thought, that's what I want to do, but there was no opening. However, the group had eventually brought in a young spine surgeon, and I was like raising my hands, like, this is the job I want. And so I was able to start working with this spine surgeon, and I felt so grateful because he was just a kind of a teacher, and he was young and excited and fresh. And so he allowed me to do so much more. He would teach me how to read MRIs. I got to do medical assisting. And then eventually I got elevated into the role of being his clinical study coordinator. And that then allowed me to engage even more directly with the device reps that we worked with, especially from the company, the study, and even the drug reps as well. And I was always the person when somebody came in and wanted to present their product, I would listen to the lunch. I would just grab and go, which a lot of people would do. And I thought that's disrespectful, number one. And number two, I'm like, I'm going to learn something. I know I'm going to learn something. I'm the girl that asks a lot of questions. And so I can so distinctly remember sitting across from this pharmaceutical rep who was talking about this muscle relaxant, which I probably could have told him about it as well. But I just sat there and in my head, this voice goes, I could so do that job. And then I was like, aha, that's what I'm going to do. And so what I decided to do was tell my surgeon, and he 100% supported me. He said, go for it. And this is when the online job opportunities just started coming available. And there was one site called monster.com. I sent out 121 resumes. I just remember
Did you say 121?
121 resumes to
Wow.
every
Wow.
pharma job in Northern California or the Bay Area. That's the area that I lived in at that time that was available. I mean, I didn't care. He wrote me a great letter of recommendation. I had my resume. I was just going to go whatever was out there. I was going to throw my hat into the ring to get it. Eventually, he got called in for an interview, moved to the final stages for a pharmaceutical company for their cardiovascular health portfolio. And I thought, this is it, hitting the big time. And I sat in there and they made me the job offer, but they said, you have to come in for training. And the training was 6 weeks. And I had just had a child a couple of years before. My son was 2, so fairly newly married, and I just couldn't leave. And they weren't flexible with me coming back in between. And so I had to regretfully decline that opportunity. I was kind of heartbroken. But at the same time, within those 121 resumes, there was a small dermatology company that's focused on skincare. And that won me over because they only had 5 days of training, and it aligned perfectly with my family obligations, responsibility, and getting my foot in the door for some sort of medical pharmaceutical sales. I really didn't care where I ended up. I just wanted to end up in that overall field. But man, 25 years later, you guys, I reflect so gratefully on a career path that has been sculpted by learning, growth, the privilege of enhancing aesthetic care for people. And each step really has been a testament to developing resilience and the power of, I think you guys speak about this a lot with your guests, is seizing pivotal moments in your life. And so 25 years later, which is the 25th year of me being in the medical aesthetic space, I feel so grateful. My faith is my foundation. I truly feel that God has led me into this marketplace to incorporate so much that he has gifted me with to bring back to the world, my peers, and the partners I work with. So that's kind of where it has led me to Color Science. I've been with a lot of really cool companies and leaders in the industry, and Color Science by far has been the best organization that I've ever worked with. I'm celebrating almost 7 years with them.
That's fantastic. Wow, Alicia, that's fantastic. And one thing that you said that kind of struck me towards the end is when you realized that even though that pharmaceutical job was going to be amazing for you, it wasn't going to work for you. And I think sometimes we as women struggle because we want to just seize every opportunity. We want to just go out there and conquer it all. But I think what you did was very wise beyond your years. And that was you recognized what was most important to you, which was your family. And lo and behold, another opportunity presented itself and you took a hold of that. And here you are 25 years later, happy. I'm sure your family is wonderful and intact and your kids are older now, of course, but that is something that has to be commended because I think sometimes we think another opportunity is never going to come. If I don't do this one, I'm never going to be able to get another opportunity. And you did. And, it sounds like it came pretty soon after and see where it's led you now. So I really commend you on that. And I want to encourage our listeners, those out there that think, well, I have to go after this job because it's the only thing I can do. No, you don't. There's other opportunities that are going to present themselves. You don't have to take a job and you shouldn't have to take a job.
Not when it comes with a high risk and expense and cost to you personally. And I think that my life experience before pursuing that allowed me to build up that resilience, to keep my eyes open to other opportunities like I did in the orthopedic practice, right? I was like, okay, let me taste and see and experience what's out there and what is or isn't going to work for me, whether that's because I just wouldn't have a passion, for example, doing the numbers piece of it. There are people way gifted more than me. I'm terrible at that stuff. I leave it to those experts. But I think that's a true thing, is to be able to recognize what you want and what you don't want and be okay with embracing and recognizing that some things aren't going to be for you and you just don't have to go through it because of fear of something else not showing up. And fear is a terrible thing for us to succumb to professionally and personally.
Absolutely. Lisa and I have actually done an episode on that. And there's an acronym that when we think about fear, this was not coined by me, but it's false evidence appearing real. It's not really real. I'm going to go back to something else and you said in your story. You chose a word I thought was interesting. When you said, how your path has grown, you said it was sculpted by learning, et cetera. I believe that you made your path. Everything that you did was amazing. And I got to tell you, you said something that I think we need to highlight. You were talking about going into that front desk and you said, I want to be the best front desk person. That is one of the most key things that women in career need to understand in careers, is that if you're the best where you are, there's going to be so many doors open that you don't see. And then you literally walked right through that. And when you said, by learning and being open, you sculpted this career to be doing what you're doing today and where you are. And I just think that's extremely commendable. And so it's very, very excited to hear you say that and very encouraged that other women out there can do the same thing.
Thank you. I appreciate that so much.
Yeah. So one of the things that we love to ask a lot of women that we interview, and men, especially when you're in a leadership position, is what does leadership look like to you? Because it's a really hot topic for a lot of our listeners. And what's interesting, we hear kind of the same message from a lot of leaders, but we'd love to hear from you and your perspective. And what does that look like? And how did you get to where you are today in terms of your leadership abilities and the teams that you have, and really what's formed that?
I appreciate you asking this question and letting me know it was coming, and from listening to your past guests as well, helped me to prepare. And I took some notes on this because I really, surface level, when you think of leadership, people think of, oh, you have a team and you're in charge of building the strategy and then having those that you work with you on your team execute on that strategy. But I'm like, how can I make this more succinct and more how I view leadership? So I wrote down a couple of things. So if you indulge me a little bit, I'm going to refer to my notes, but they're in front of me. In just its essence, leadership is creating a better future for your business and for others. That was what really just spoke to me. A better future for the business that you're in and for others. And I say others because we're not only leaders within our professional life and our place of work, but we're leaders in our home, in our communities. For me, in my church, I've assumed some leadership roles and some outreach roles. So really, our leadership and the talents that we bring extend even beyond the boundaries of, who signs our paycheck and who we spend, 40 plus hours a week with. It really is, I think, in essence, really about building that better future and helping others to recognize that and be a part of it, and even finding them in themselves. And then there was two other things, if you can indulge me, too, that I was looking at with leaders. So look at this, and I looked at what are, and we've heard the analogy like a boss versus a leader or a manager versus a leader. I'm not going to get into that. I'm going to focus on some of the positive things. So I was looking at what makes a leader healthy? Because health is a super big part of my life, mind, body, and spirit. And so in leadership, what does healthy leadership look like? And I said, well, a healthy leader produces faithful followers, right? People want to be able to come alongside you and support your vision, your dream, your strategy because of what you're offering to them. So instead of being unpredictable, somebody that's healthy more has a clear vision. You're not domineering, but you listen, you collaborate. You're not secretive. Transparency, trust, and visibility is incredible. I see that as a huge trait and something I value in the leaders that I work with today at Color Science. You're not passive, waiting for stuff to happen, but you're very active. And a healthy leader is really involved, I think, in the engaged, really, not just involved, but engaged in the day-to-day of the organization as well. You don't have to be in it doing it, but you know what's going on. And when you're a healthy leader, I think people want to follow you, they want to sacrifice, and they want to give you their best every day, right? So you show up. And then the other thing I thought about a leader too is that what does it take to be an empowering leader, right? So you're not just producing followers like some sort of mindless cult, right? But you're producing other great leaders, because a lot of times people don't recognize their own leadership potential because maybe they're not in a title of leadership. Maybe they don't have direct reports. And I'm going to be honest with you, I right now don't have any direct reports in my role, but I am a leader within my organization because I work cross-functionally with almost every single group in the organization. And so empowering leaders do all the things that a healthy leader does that I just shared, but they're not focused on themselves. It's really how they empower people with the ability to say yes to the opportunities they receive and the visions they have. And I think that ability to help others say yes creates that kind of culture of empowerment. So those are a few things that you guys stimulated me to think about when you ask about what is leadership to me. So
I love the mind, body, spirit. Cindy, what about you?
Well, so mind, body, spirit brings me to one of the most, whenever you hear something, it throws you back. So I was a swimmer for a long time and I did master swimming, and we had this coach who also trained the other young swimmers. And I tried to come on early Friday mornings and it'd be a busy week. And some days I'd be really tired, or some days I'd have a headache, or some days you're like, oh, this is crazy. And he would look at me and he would say, mind, body, spirit, get in the water. And it was one of these things where he's like, yes, you have a lot of work, but you're not going to be your best until you put it all together. And if you're not nurturing those simple things, and I can see him right now just standing on the side of the deck telling mind, body, spirit. He was a coach for 47 years. So you talk about leadership, that's somebody and he coached Olympians. So it was Dudley Duncan is his name, and it's something that will stick with me. He also coach my daughter. And so, yeah, I just sat there and thought, you're right. And what I loved you just mentioned about healthy leadership and empowering leadership, it brings so much more. And so I really thank you for that, because we have a lot of listeners that might be thinking about advancing in their roles or currently, but there's also the box, right? We always think about the box of leadership, that we only are to serve this, like you said, direct reports underneath. And I really like that you opened the word leadership to a lot more that we can bring to our teams and to our businesses.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that mind, body, spirit. I mean, when you said, and it made me think of health and diet, and Cindy and I are very active as you are. And, it's all about, if you're healthy in your lifestyle, then you're healthy in your mind, you're healthy in your business. It shows, in the clothes you wear, all those things combined to give you more confidence. But when you said a healthy leader, it just brought to mind like a really strong yet open leader that is like shining brightly. Just to me, it's like a bright, shining leader. And it's somebody that I would want to follow no matter where they're going. If they're going to take me up this massive mountain that I'm going to have to climb, I'm going to do it because they're doing it with me and they're happy to do it and they're encouraging us. And it's just like your coach, Cindy. It's all about being that healthy model, not an unhealthy browbeating, beating you down, you're going to do this because I said so type mentality. And like you said, you bring that to the home too, right? I mean, we're mothers, we're wives, we're sisters, we're aunts. We bring a certain amount of leadership as well, even into our friendships. And I think it's so important to keep it all healthy. So I really love that. Yeah,
I know.
we model it.
The new word, you coined a new word, healthy leadership.
Healthy leadership. And I think too, it's like being able to recognize as a leader the potential in others. And as example, one of the things that I've been able to do in my role at Color Science is, even though I said I don't have direct reports right now, I created a community of our partners who are subject matter experts. They're nurses or licensed estheticians or business professionals within the practice. And we call them our Know Better Skin Pros. And so they're kind of people that aren't ambassadors or where they're just promoting the products, but they're educating and elevating their peers and others to be better in their business, in their treatment recommendations and understanding and product knowledge. But what is part of being a pro is that they also have opportunities to elevate, to get on podium, to publish articles in the journals and the magazines, to be able to provide media opportunities for quotes in publications and beauties. So I've had the joy of doing all that in my profession, which has been such a blessing. And now I see all these other pros that don't have that opportunity, but have the skill sets and the desire and the drive to want to do it. And so I am coaching them through this process. So they're the ones now at the next level of leaders. And that has been so much more exciting. And I have a great leader who you interviewed, Heather Goodchild. She was one of your guests. And she also speaks on podium. I'm just going to give you an example of somebody, and a leader encouraging your coach, Cindy, encouraged you, right? Like pushed you because he saw the potential within you. And I'm sure, Lisa, you have had the same exact experience with people in your life. You just haven't thrown the story out there. But I'm always aware of deadlines to submit abstracts to speak on podium. That's the way it usually works, right, at these medical conferences. And so a deadline was coming up last Friday, and I had already had our pros who are submitting, and I'm like making sure they're getting their abstracts in and helping them craft what their talks are going to be. And I love that. And I said to Heather, I said, I think I'm going to sit this one out for this one. And she goes, no, you need to talk. You need to submit. You should talk about this, or you should talk about that. And I was like, okay. And I went back to, because at the beginning of every year, I prepare myself and I write out about 5 to 6 abstracts that things I would like to speak about that would bring value to others, not just for myself. And I just went to my archives of like, okay, what do I have in there? And it was so interesting because a couple of the things that I had in there were right along with what she was encouraging me to do. So here I am being encouraged by somebody who's my leader to do something that she sees in me that would bring value and an opportunity to grow and shine. It's such a really important thing to consider for your listeners. Is your leadership is not just about, like you said, being the boss of somebody and having a direct report or a team. Your leadership is how you are helping others grow, whether they're on your team or not on your team, in your neighborhood, in your church, in your family.
Well, you just had a perfect example, and I see why Color Science is so successful. And again, this is another company that's majority women. And here's Heather, your leader, encouraging you, but you just gave the example of what you did for the others. And you know what it is? It's like you have this company of all the people that want to be the best at the front desk. You said that at the beginning. when you encourage people, they want to come work for you, and you provide this culture that allows them to grow and do better. And that's where you really see things succeed. As Lisa and I talked about in one episode about how when you find another woman who can empower you, you become so much better. And it's so great to hear your examples of how you work with these other women who really lift you up and really bring value to your business. So kudos to you all over there at Color Signs, because you're certainly doing something right.
We got the secret sauce for sure, but it's not really a secret because we keep coming on podcasts like yours and speaking on podium and able to share that. So hopefully the gospel of being a good, healthy leader is getting out there to everybody.
Well, that's our new secret. We are the secret to medical device sales. So we've got the new healthy leadership secret.
Love it.
Thanks to Alicia.